We're in the middle of building a 1,700 horsepower four-wheel drive drag truck, and the name of the game today is to get the drivetrain in place so we can begin mock-up and fabrication on the important things like the turbo kit, the intercooler placement, wiring, and all that other good stuff. We can't build those things until we know where the dots are going to be that we got to connect. Now, last time, or 2 weeks ago rather, I attempted to get this engine installed into the truck, but we ran into a bit of a side quest when it came to the oil pan, and we ended up building this little 2-quart sump kickout deal on the side. And obviously, since you guys have seen this last, we got the pan coated in wrinkle black. It's all sealed up, permanently installed on the engine. And the engine is speaking of which, a 535 cubic inch Gen 7 big block Chevy, capable of 1,700 horsepower, I hope, and it will have twin turbos on it. Anyway, we also changed the timing cover over. This is the little bit later style for the 2004 and up 8.1. We put a coat of satin black on the block. We have some atomic motor mounts on there. And basically, the engine is almost ready to run, short of push rods, and, well, I have the lifters. But right now, it's just kind of in a permanent mock-up mode. Like I said, it's going to be a ton of fab work. Don't want any shavings or anything to get inside the engine. But the engine is ready to go into the chassis, but the transmission is not. Ultimately, this is going to be running a 4L80, very likely with a complete aftermarket case just because of the power output that we're going to be making and the weight of the truck. But for now, we're just going to be installing this junkyard takeout. Now, it is a 2-wheel drive 4L80, which is not the end of the world because I can just swap the output shaft and the extension housing over to 4-wheel drive stuff. But we do have a problem with the case because whoever pulled this out likely forgot this bolt here. And as you can see, it is busted off. So since we have the TIG welder all set up for doing cast aluminum, we just spent a little bit of time with that last time on the oil pan. Let's get this thing patched up, welded together, because I think ultimately this may wind up in the S10 once we get our aftermarket transmission built for this truck. So no sense to throw out a good transmission. Let's get it fixed up. So as with any welding project, first thing I'm going to do is get the metal cleaned up. This is especially important with cast aluminum since it's so dirty. My favorite tool is just the die grinder with this coarse carbide bit on here. It works really great for aluminum. So just kind of make all this shiny, make it fit. Just a little while later, we get the cleanup pretty much squared away, and then I kind of went nuts and deburred and kind of cleaned up all the casting flash around the whole transmission. I don't know why. I was there, just kind of had to do it. But, I mean, doesn't it look so much neater without having that rough casting edge up here? Or at least I think so. Anyway, yeah, this is just kind of what we are left with. Going to do a hand switcheroo here. Just got all that cleaned up, and now we just need a way to hold it flat. So you just saw I put the dowels in the back of the big block. So all we're gonna do now is just kind of hold this thing up from the hoist, bolt it to the bell housing the transmission here, and then weld it in. Luckily, there is a bolt hole on this piece, so theoretically, it should be held exactly where it needs to be. So this repair is definitely turning out to be a bit more challenging than welding to an oil pan. There's a ton of porosity in this cast aluminum transmission case, and I've got most of the upper part welded here together. It doesn't look super great, and if you can barely see right there, that's kind of what I'm fighting. Like I'll weld along, and then you just have these little pockets and bubbles open up. And I got, like I said, a lot of this kind of filled in, but I still haven't done the front because the block was bolted up. However, as I just finished up welding, I heard the sound you never want to hear when you're doing a welding project, and that's a crack. Yeah, it's just like a quick, sharp, loud popping noise, and I looked around, and I don't know if we can show you on camera, but right through there is a slight crack, and right up there between the bolt and the dowel pin location is another crack. You can kind of see the line right there where I sanded just a little bit. Basically what happened, I probably got a little bit too much heat on the lower area right through here, because I was really fighting a lot of that porosity. I was kind of getting impatient. It was last night right before 6 o'clock. It was time to go home, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this happen. And I kind of got the weld welded, but yeah, just too much heat, too localized, and it was all bolted up, so the stress just of the metal expanding was a little bit too much, and right there got a crack, and right there have a crack. So I can continue to try to weld this thing up, and at this point I'm kind of committed just because I'm determined to see if I can actually make this repair. Although realistically in the long run, I don't know if it's going to be a good idea to have this case running. But that's not the end of the world, because as I was sitting at home last night thinking about it, if and when I do build the reed cased transmission for this truck, I'm gonna need a donor transmission for a lot of the guts. Yeah, there'll be a lot of aftermarket stuff in there too, but I think there's a fair amount of parts I would need from this to put into an aftermarket case anyway. So I could use this as the donor transmission, or if I just want to use this in the S10 like we talked about when we get the LS in that, when we get to the Power Rider stage for the S10, then you can go online and you can buy replacement cases for like between $200 to $400 anyway. So definitely not the end of the world. I was hoping to save this case, and if I was a little bit more patient, probably I could have done it. But like I said, I'm going to carry on with the welding just because at this point it's good practice. So I want to pull the converter out. I want to clean up the inside and get the inside of this crack welded. And I am going to try to V out these grooves a little bit and just see if I can kind of get some weld on there to repair it. But again, this is really just for mock-up, and this is kind of a side project, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But at the same time, I'm determined to make it happen. So let's carry on. So I have spent entirely too much time on this little side project repairing the transmission case. And realistically, there is a small chance I might not even use the case, but it's a great opportunity to practice. And I'm kind of glad I took the time to struggle with this casting because like I mentioned in the last video doing the oil pan, cast aluminum has always been my Achilles heel. And I feel a little bit more comfortable with working on it. The transmission is, I'd say like 85% repaired. This is kind of what the top looks like. I showed you this before, I think, but those little pockets right there, like just constantly will pop up. And I think that's just a function of the transmission's been in the truck or a truck forever. It's probably had grease and oil on it. So there's that dirt, which I did steam clean off. But just the casting, the aluminum is a little bit porous and it constantly fights. I did also manage to sort of kind of patch up these cracks here and here. So those are patched up. This is what the outside looks like. That's what the inside looks like. So definitely, that's the back side of the crack there. Definitely not like the best looking repair, but like I said, I think I would be comfortable actually running this. Maybe not in the 1500 horsepower truck, but you know, the S10, we're gonna do the all-wheel drive conversion, and we're gonna have probably, I wanna supercharge that one, I think. So let's say we have 700 or 800 horsepower. I'd probably be comfortable running this transmission in the 700 to 800 horsepower setup. The only thing that's still unknown is when I spent all the time welding this with the transmission off, this might have warped quite a bit, so it might not even line up with the dowels on there now. I don't know. You know, you have to put a lot of heat into the part to make it weld right, and metal moves around when it gets hot. So maybe it returned to its original position, maybe not, but we'll find out in a minute. Regardless, it's time to get back to the task at hand of actually getting our 1700 horsepower capable 535 big block installed into the chassis. I don't want to say for good, but for the mock-up phase, because like we talked about, we got to get turbos on, we've got to get the exhaust, the drive line, you know, I need to get a transfer case in there just so we can get, you know, front drive shafts and drive shaft loops and all that good stuff. But the only unknown right now, I know the engine will fit, obviously, because it was in there before, but the only thing I don't know is when I install it with our new sump installed onto the side of our oil pan, will that actually clear the diff on the way in? I know it'll fit when it's in there, but fingers crossed we actually can get it in there. That right there is what I was worried about, but looks like we got plenty of room going in. So, send it home. Thankfully, the engine went back into the scrapyard drag truck with zero issues. There's plenty of room around the oil pan going in past the diff and the diff bracket and all that stuff, even with that extra bump that we added on the side. And I don't think I even like scratched any of the paint off of it. So that's awesome because in the lifetime of this vehicle, you know, it's a race truck. It's got a pretty high power engine in it. Realistically, the engine will have to come in and out many times throughout its life. I mean, heaven forbid we blow it up or something like that, but it's got to be serviceable. So really glad that it was able to fit in there. There is a little bit of a modification we got to do on this side. I'll show you that in just a second. And of course, you probably noticed underneath that we have a two-wheel drive transmission when this is a four-wheel drive truck. I do have the conversion cross member from Tyler at DTR Fab. I just need to get the correct four-wheel drive extension housing for the 4L80 and then we can like bolt it up for good. But at least right now I have the tail housing just kind of blocked up at the right height. So the engine's pretty much where it needs to be except for that, which we'll take care of in a minute. The other good thing is the bell housing on the 4L80 bolted right up to the big block. I do have those long extended dowel pins. I ordered those thinking they were just the standard length ones, but they're for like a mid-plate set up, and they are a little bit long, but the transmission bolted right up, which is great because if I had to, I think I could use that in the S10. Now, speaking of the S10, a lot of you guys have been asking about that. I actually drove it into the shop today. I'm just checking out a few things underneath. You've been wondering, when are we going to get back to it? Which I'm collecting parts. I'm trying to get everything, everything gathered up. So whenever we do start on the engine swap, we can just go nuts. But real quick, this is if you're unfamiliar, it's a 98 S10 four-wheel drive. We lowered it down last fall. We rebuilt all the front suspension. We redid the rear. We put a 8.5 10 bolt from a ZR2 in there. Love the stance, by the way. This is going to be all-wheel drive with an LS. I already have the all-wheel drive transfer case. I already put in the ZR2 cast iron front diff with the all-wheel drive Bravada passenger axle shaft in it. So it's pretty much ready to go for its new powertrain, except I've just been daily driving it. But the one thing I will do probably, this is totally a side tangent, just to catch you up where my brain's at on the S10. The one thing I'm going to do right away on this is a 3-link rear suspension. Right now it's on leaf springs, and I was cruising it around the other night, and I was trying to do a burnout. It's a V6, it doesn't do that great, but this truck wheel hops so awful, like it shakes the dash, it shakes the entire truck, and I was worried I was gonna like snap a U-joint or something. It was that violent, hopping up and down on the ground. Now we could fix that with Caltrax, but I've always wanted to do a 3-link with a Panhard bar and coilovers, and like I said, this is kind of gonna be a quote-unquote pro touring setup. So that's what I'm sort of visualizing now. I'm just checking out a few things underneath this. It leaks ridiculously. But anyway, I wanted to show you, again, sorry for the tangent. We'll get back to the motor project in a second. But it wheel hops so badly, the pinion climbs up so high, the bolts for the bearing caps on the U-joint actually hit and mark into the drive shaft. You can see the two there. And you can see, I think, the two on that side. And that's just the, when you try to accelerate, the pinion climbs up and then it kind of loses traction or something. It hops back and forth and it's violent. So instead of using Caltrax, which would fix it, I want to build a 3-link. So we'll get to that soon. Engine-wise, I think realistically we're just going to put the 5.3 in it, which was from this donor truck. It's only got like 160,000 on it, and it runs beautifully, so we'll probably just throw a cam in it, stick it in the truck for now. I still would love to find a 6.2 at some point, but price-wise right now, it's hard to beat the free engine I already have. So anyway, enough about the S10, back to the scrapyard drag truck. The one last thing I want to fix today is one of those things that bugs me because the engine is ever so slightly crooked. I had the angle finder out, and I think it's like 1.1 or 1.2 degrees off from perfectly level, which isn't that bad. Everything fits, but it bugs me that much where I'm going to fix it. So all I'm going to do is put the truck back up in the air, jack the engine up just a little bit, and just take the bolt hole that's in the motor mount. I'll show you in a second. And we'll oval it out a little bit, and I'll re-weld it so it stays perfectly round. But that way, when we're done and we're doing all our fab work, the engine is going to be perfectly level with the frame. All right, so the frame is quote-unquote level at 0.6 degrees with a down arrow. That's what we are going to consider level. I've checked several points on the frame, but the motor is, if we use this flat spot here, at 1.92 degrees down arrow. So this side needs to go up. I have the center bolt removed from the motor mount, and all we're going to do is raise it with this jack until we get a matching measurement. So with the engine in its new level position where I'm happy with it, if you look right down there, I will take an accurate measurement, but basically I'm going to move the hole down by about half of its diameter. Or I guess if I remember from high school, that would be the radius. All right, so here's our fix. That's the original hole. This is kind of what we're going to do. We're just going to take the hole and move it a little lower, which means you have to grind out the bottom. And then, so we don't have an oval, we'll take the MIG welder and fill it in up top. And we'll, of course, grind it and re-ensure that it's round. But that is precisely where I want the hole to be. sir. So I've got the truck all wrapped up and put back together, and once I actually took the final measurements, we only had to move that hole in the motor mount 180 thousandths of an inch, approximately 3/16. For you tape measure guys, or for you metric guys, that's like, I don't know, it's some millimeters or meters, or I don't know. It's like that much. But why is that much important? Well, number one, it's visual, because when you would like sight across the bottom of the truck, you see all the cross members and stuff. You could peek up and see the oil pan, and it was all askew. Like one went that way a little bit and one went the other way a little bit, which just is not cool. So we had to fix it. But also there's a scientific reason, because when we go to bolt up this transmission mount, we don't want it to have any sort of unnecessary flex. Yes, it is made from rubber or polyurethane, and there will be some give in the mount, but check this out. We get the cross member right here, 1.1 degrees, and if we come on the mount pad right here, come on, it was a little bit closer earlier there, 1.2, oh, there it is, 1.1 degrees, close enough. So yeah, call it like within a tenth, but to me, if you're gonna do something, do it right. Do it to the absolute best of your ability. And that's what I feel like we've done here is, or just it's satisfying that OCD thing in the back of your head, which that's probably mostly what it is for me. But I'm happy I took the time, and realistically it only took like 45 minutes to get that pulled out and move the hole, and it's good fabrication practice, and just again, do it to the very best of your ability. But anyway, that's all we have for you for today. I know we've been doing a lot of fab work on the race truck. I'm going to try to mix it up here in a little bit and get to some other stuff, whether it's the S10 or some other cool projects that we can come up with. But remember, my goal for the end of the year is I want to get that thing fired up. It won't be done, but I at least want to get the thing fired up, which means we have to plumb the fuel system, get the wiring done, get the computer mounted, and like a gazillion other things. But that's a 535 big block. It's got a solid roller cam in it, and I want to hear it. So we carry on. Thank you guys for watching. Come back soon.